gentlemen, welcome back to the reloaded version of Perfect Reload, where we talk about what's happening in the world of video games. And obviously, I've decided to upgrade my set. We are now filming live from the moon. And, I wanted to make more professional production. So I went to Best Buy because I thought it'd be cool to have like a big, impressive television. You can see I have the Dangertron 5000 to my left. And when I was making the purchase, the guy goes, "Hey, have you thought about maybe getting the extended warranty?" And I was like, warranties are for suckers. I don't need an extended warranty on this thing. And lo and behold, 4 days later, it's now possessed by a demonic Christian Slater.
I'm here to pump up the volume. I'm fueled by Satan's cold touch and gas station dick pills.
So yeah, that's what I've been dealing with. I can't get him to go away. He follows me everywhere, and he won't shut up.
I was in a movie with Morgan Freeman.
I'm aware that you were in a movie with Morgan Freeman. That's all you talk about. Constantly, he's telling me about all the movies he was in and about how he knows Morgan Freeman.
I was in a movie with Morgan Freeman.
Yeah, exactly. So that's pretty much been my life. But, the show must go on, so I guess I'm going to make the most of it. And Christian, since we are now stuck together, do you have any experience at all with video games?
Yeah, I got a lot of experience with video games. I was in The Wizard, so
that's a good point.
I'm pretty much responsible for the video game boom of the 90s. My performance was critically acclaimed. Washington Post staff writer Rita Kempley wrote that the movie was tacky and moribund, and I take full responsibility for that.
Well, I guess it's good that we all own up to our mistakes. But that being said, let's kick it off with what I've been playing recently. So over the past couple of months, it's pretty much been non-stop Call of Duty. I've really enjoyed the game. I do think it is probably the weakest selection of maps they've had in quite some time. It's nowhere near as close to the level of maps they had in the first Modern Warfare reboot, but I do think it's a really solidly playing game, and that's kind of what keeps bringing me back. They made a lot of changes to the game, how you unlock camos and unlock weapons and all that. And honestly, at first I thought it was kind of, incomprehensible, but over time it's made more sense. It really is designed to get you to play with as many different weapons as possible in the game, and that's actually been pretty fun. But to be honest, I've just been kind of sucked down the hole of camo grinding on shipment, and they took shipment away, and at that point I realized I was kind of maybe burned out on Call of Duty for a little bit, and maybe I need to kind of rest and relax and take some time away from it and pick it back up. I bought it digitally, so it's always going to be there for me to play, and it wasn't necessarily something I needed to keep doing night after night after night. So I decided, I wanted to play something a little bit different, something a little bit fresh for me at least. And if you watched my Game of the Year video last year, you saw that I talked about I really wanted to kind of get out of my comfort zone with video games. And last year I tried my first horror game, really, with The Quarry, and I ended up really liking it, and it ranked very high for my favorite games of the year. And so I haven't played a real RPG in quite some time. Honestly, the last one that I really got into, I think, was South Park Stick of Truth. And that was mostly because it had the same combat system that Mario RPG has, which is my all-time favorite game. And I figured, that'd be like a nice, easy transition, back into it. And I really enjoyed it. So about a month or so ago, I was like, well, they have the other South Park game, and I never played that. I know it has a different combat system, but why don't I kind of give that a shot? And so I picked up Fractured Butthole and started playing it, and I do like it. The combat system is not necessarily for me. It's that sort of like active combat. I could be totally wrong, but I think it might be like the Chrono Trigger style combat, but I never really played much Chrono Trigger back in the day. But I thought the game was good. The first game was really like a love letter to the people that were around since the beginning of South Park, and I remember watching the debut episode. So I've kind of been around since the beginning, but I dropped, like most long-running shows, you drop off after a while, and a lot of the references in this game are from seasons that I haven't seen, or maybe I pick up one or two here and there, because I do, pop in occasionally with South Park and watch an episode. They do stay very topical and current with the times. And, sometimes, you just hear through the grapevine, like, oh man, this week's South Park was really good. So, I check it out. But a lot of the references are characters that I just aren't familiar with. But I really enjoyed playing through the game, and I got several hours into it, and it's not that I didn't like it, but I just kind of was like, I think I maybe want a different style of RPG, and I couldn't really figure out what I wanted to do. And at that point I was like, well, it's getting closer to new releases coming out. Maybe I should just wait for like Forspoken or Hogwarts Legacy or something like that. But, with getting that burnout with Call of Duty, I was like, I got to find something else to fill my time. And so I decided to start playing the Final Fantasy VII Remake. So Final Fantasy VII, when it came out, I got it on the PS1, and it just wasn't for me. I really liked Final Fantasy 3, which is 6, and Final Fantasy 2, which is 4, and I really liked that. And at the time, I just wasn't really ready to make that leap into 3D graphics. I just thought the game looked bad, and still to this day I think most PS1 and even PS2 games just look bad. And I know that's awful to not play a game because you don't like the way it looks, but sometimes that's just the way it is. But I really like this remake. I rarely play a game every single day. Some days I don't play video games at all, and honestly sometimes I go a whole week without playing a game. But I've been playing Final Fantasy VII Remake every night for the past week at least. I think I started it. I'm filming on Saturday, and I think I started it last Saturday morning. I'm about 8 hours in, so I've been playing about an hour a night. And I really like the combat system. This kind of hack and slash, but still you can sort of pause time, or really it just slows it down to a really high degree. You're not really getting hit while you're doing it, and you're in the menus, and you can flip back and forth between your characters really fast. And I'm really enjoying it, and I didn't think I would. And I'm actually enjoying it so much that I'm dedicated. I'm going to finish this. From right here, it's about 40 hours, so I'm getting to the point where I'm about a quarter of the way through it. And I'm doing all the side missions. It definitely bogs down a little bit from what I've heard. They are making this 40-hour game essentially what was the first 5 hours of the original game. So they've really slowed it down. A lot of new characters, a lot of fleshing out characters that, were only briefly in the original game, lots of extra side missions and stuff like that. And, but it's been nice. And I will be honest, outside of major cutscenes, I'm playing the game on mute, and I'm using it as my way to catch up on podcasts and, just watch the random YouTube videos that I watch during the week. And it's been pretty nice. It's a nice change of pace from just I got an hour before bed, I guess I'll just watch TV. And instead of doing that, it's I can, maybe watch a show, but I can also play this game and kind of kill, two things at once. But it's really solid, and it's really piqued my interest to maybe play another RPG. And I've been thinking about, what should I play next? And there are new releases coming out that I'm going to pick up. But I looked up Tales of Arise, and I had never played a Tales game outside of the GameCube one, which was Tales of Symphonia, I think. And it looks like it has the same kind of free range combat style, I watched a couple of videos online, and maybe it is, maybe it isn't, from what I could see, that's what it looked like. And so I looked it up. It's a really cheap game, and I think that I might just kind of keep this ball rolling and really continue on this year, playing different kinds of games. And that's it's been really nice. It's nice to just break things up and not always be locked into the same kind of thing, over and over again. I end up tending to play a lot of sports games because I would play them on mute, and that was my opportunity to catch up on my shows for the week. And now I can do it with an RPG, and hey, big story things happening. Pause the podcast, turn the volume back up, get engaged in that story. But, when you're just kind of mindlessly going through, dungeons or, killing low-level monsters leading up to the boss, you don't really need to be hearing anime screams and symphonic music blasting, out of your television. So I'm really enjoying it. I really didn't think that I was going to like it as much as I did. And, I definitely can understand why people were so excited for this to come out, and the hype was so big around it, and why there's such a fervent fan base for that game. And actually, I guess I should have mentioned in between South Park and Final Fantasy VII Remake, I actually decided to try Final Fantasy X first, because I always heard that Final Fantasy X was very good. And so they have the HD remaster available, so I downloaded that. It's just too slow for me. The turn-based system, I don't know if I could really go back to the traditional turn-based system these days, unless it is that kind of timing-based mechanic that Mario and the first South Park had. But I don't know. Maybe at some point I'll go back to Final Fantasy X. I got 5-6 hours into it, something like that, before it just became, the random encounters and all of that was just, it's just got to be a bit much. I think maybe I'm just kind of past that point in my video game playing days. But yeah, it's the moral of the story really is, this year, we're in January, so you've got all these games coming out, a lot of which we don't even know about. There are going to be games coming out this year that we've never heard of, right? take this year as an opportunity to play a different genre, break out of what you've been doing and try different things. It's good for all of us, and I'm really glad that I'm doing it. And then real quick before we get into the news from last week, we do have a couple of big releases coming out. So I'm filming this on Saturday, but this is going up on Monday. So tomorrow, when you're watching this, Forspoken comes out. I don't know if I'm going to pick it up day one. I enjoyed the demo. I thought the demo was solid, so I did really like it. But I don't know, with how invested I am in Final Fantasy, if that's the right time to buy the game. I might wait, because I think by the time I'm done with Final Fantasy, Hogwarts Legacy will be ready to come out, and I'm just at that point where, for whatever reason, it wasn't even because the game is coming out. I just recently rewatched all the Harry Potter movies, so it's just kind of on my mind. So with that game coming out, it's just perfect timing, where I think that it is going to be a day one purchase, and I think that it is going to be something that I see myself kind of diving into, and maybe I just pick up Forspoken after that, because after that, I know in March, the new Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order game's coming out. That's the closest thing I've ever played to like a Souls game. I played it a few years ago. I really enjoyed it. I don't know if that's a day one purchase. I want to see reviews on that. I want to see how that goes. And it's also tough because that if you just wait, it's not a game I necessarily need to rush out to play anytime soon. If I wait in a year to 2 years, it'll be on the EA Access Game Pass thing. So I don't know, maybe that's my 2025 game. Who knows? But that kind of wraps up what I've been playing. Leave a comment below with what you've been playing, what you're looking forward to as we kind of start ramping up. Big game release this month, big game release next month, big game release in March. It's a good start to the year. All right, it is time for some of the news that happened this past week.
Cuffs was the 65th biggest box office movie of 1992.
That's great, Christian. Honestly, I like Cuffs. I'm not upset about that. Thank you for that tidbit. That was good to know. I really like the fact that the villain in Cuffs wears a t-shirt with his own face on it. I should probably start doing that myself. We're going to start things off with the Black Myth Wukong new trailer. It's like an animated trailer. It's actually got a really cool style to it. It announces that the game is finally coming out summer of 2024. If you're not familiar with this game, it's a retelling of Odyssey to the West. We've seen that tale told multiple times. Most famously probably in video games is Odyssey, which came out in the 360 PS3 era. It's the Monkey King story, I think is what it is. But this game looks incredible. Like it's a team from China that nobody had ever heard of, and they just come out the gate a couple of years ago with this trailer that really blows everybody away. It was really kind of the talk of the video game media landscape for a while after footage released of it, and it's cool that they're committing now to getting this game out, because I think a lot of people thought this looks like a glorified tech demo, like a really beautiful but glorified tech demo. But there's obviously a game there, and I think it's nice that they don't say like, "Hey, it's coming out this year." Like they are upfront, like, "Hey, we still have a ways to go. We got another year and a half to get this thing out." And maybe, hopefully, because of that, that doesn't cause a delay where this time next year they say, "Oh, we're not going to make the summer. We'll be out holiday." But I'm really interested to seeing how this thing actually plays. I think this is a game that's going to be very important for them to actually get it into the hands of people to play, whether that's in the way of a demo or getting media together to play it so they can give you real, honest previews where it's not just like, we were brought into a room and we were showed an hour-long demo of somebody else playing the game. Like they've got to get hands-on with it. And I think that would be that's going to be the best way to really move forward with this, and I am genuinely excited to see what they do. All right, moving on from that, very similar to, Chinese mythology is Electronic Arts has finally announced when their next golf game, PGA Tour, is coming out. PGA Tour has been gone for a little while, and 2K has taken over the golf mantle. And I got to be honest with you, I thought that the PGA game, or the 2K game from a couple years ago, was pretty good. I played, 40, 50 hours of that, and I really enjoyed it. Golf games are, they can be relaxing at times. I heard that last year's version was not great. So maybe this is EA's opportunity to kind of sweep in and take back the golf video game fans. The trailer looks good. They're adding a lot of nice features to it. It really goes in depth with the control system, and they're bringing back a lot of like previously used control mechanics in the game to kind of like, make your ball bounce a little bit further, different things you can do. And they've said that each golf course will play differently. A course like Augusta, which is like much more probably well maintained than even other high level golf courses, they said that their ball will react differently on that. And I think that's cool because in a golf game, the last thing you want is for every course to feel the same. Even though it is different, the holes are in different locations, they eventually feel kind of samey. And you don't really want that. And I think that it's really a neat idea to make the golf courses themselves react differently when you're playing them. And then also, each golfer that you can play as is going to have like their own swing. Every player is going to feel differently, kind of like a basketball game. Everybody that shoots the ball differently. Not everybody shoots a basketball the same way in real life. Not everybody swings a golf club the same way in real life. And I think that that's really neat because in the PG or in the 2K games, I never bothered playing with any of the real golfers in there because I'll play the same. I just created my own guy. And now there might be actually incentive to play with these real golfers, not just because like, oh, you want to play as your favorite golfer, but each one's going to play differently. And it's interesting, with sports games, because sports games really get tossed aside at times. They make their money and they do very well, but they don't really get covered in the same way. There's a lot of, I get it. A lot of people that play video games as a hobby just don't really care about sports, but a lot do. And it's nice that they aren't just using these games as cash grabs. Obviously, sports games are cash grabs because they are riddled with microtransactions, but it is still nice that even with the games that are riddled with microtransactions, to have gameplay improvements and to actually, care about the people that are playing the game that might not want to travel down those, fantasy card-based, pack opening, blind box game modes. I have no interest in any of that stuff. So it's nice to see. And then also coming out in March, apparently, is WWE 2K23. Box art and release seemingly leaked earlier this week. They did say that they were going to officially start talking about the game Royal Rumble weekend, which I think is next weekend. And it makes sense now. They've gotten away from the October release date. They were always an October game. And then, they took the year off because WWE 2K20 was horrible. They took the year off, and then they even delayed 2K22 to the point where it came out spring last year instead of October 2021. And last year's game was great. It really was a return to form. It was a very fun game. They put a lot of effort into making it something special. And this year I think is going to be important because this is going to be the first year they have competition. AEW, the other large wrestling organization in America, is releasing their game this year, and it's actually being developed by people that worked on the classic WWE games, No Mercy and WrestleMania 2000. It's a style of gameplay people to this day still wish came back in wrestling video games. Is a lot more simplified because modern wrestling video game controls are super complicated and not easy to pick up and play. They did mitigate that a little bit with last year's WWE game, but still, it's a lot of buttons to remember. It's a lot of, contextual buttons to remember. Oh, if I'm in this position, I have to hit this button, or if I'm in this position, this button does something different than if it does if I'm over here, like that kind of thing. So a lot of people have been really waiting for AEW to announce a release date, and they've been very hesitant, and I think they're hesitant for good reason. I think they wanted to see when WWE is going to do their thing. I genuinely believe now that if WWE is coming out in March, which I think it will, I don't think they have any reason to miss that release date, then we see AEW in the summer. If you release 4 to 6 months after WWE, enough people are going to be burned out of that game that they're looking for something else. And I wouldn't be surprised if they time it with, I think AEW has an end of summer pay-per-view. They have a Labor Day pay-per-view, so maybe you get it out in September, maybe you get it out in August. So I think that that's probably likely when we're going to see that. But I think it's cool that we're going to have 2 big wrestling games on the market, and I will pick up both of them, and I'm sure I will at least enjoy WWE unless it is absolutely terrible. But I don't think it will be, and I am curious but cautious about the AEW game. I haven't seen enough of it. Nobody has seen enough of it to really have a good opinion on that. And then last up for the news this week, Persona 3 Portable and Persona 4 Golden have finally released on other systems besides the Vita and PSP and PC.
Fucking weeb.
Yes, thank you, Christian. Persona 3 Portable, I didn't play a lot of. I had it on PSP. I enjoyed what I played of it, but I didn't play it to completion. Persona 4 Golden, however, I picked it up on the Vita and loved it. It's one of my all-time favorite games. I enjoyed every second of that game. I don't know if I'm going to play it again. Even though at the top of the show I talked about I'm kind of getting back into RPGs. I don't know if I'm going to play that again right now. I might just get burned out on RPGs at that point. But it is a great game, and it really is nice to have these on systems that you could play, because for the longest time, Persona 4 Golden was only on the Vita. We only got that PC port just a couple of years ago. And now both of these are on Game Pass. And Atlas has actually said that they are committed to having all the Persona games being released on Game Pass. So Persona 3 Portable, Persona 4 on Game Pass. They're also putting out Persona 5 Royal on Game Pass in the near future. So it's cool. If you haven't played these games, they are some of the greatest RPGs of the past 30 years. I mean, they really are, especially Persona 4 Golden. I think Persona 4 Golden is kind of in a class of its own. I know some people like the story of Persona 3 better. It's maybe a little bit darker. I always thought that the humor and lightness of Persona 4, even though it does deal with very serious subject matter, I always kind of preferred that. But I am excited to play it. It's been a long time since I played it. Actually, Christian, did you ever interact with Persona 4 Golden when it came out?
I didn't play that when that came out. I was too busy filming Soldiers of Fortune with Sean
No one
Bean.
saw that.
Kyle Meany was in that movie, the guy from Star Trek. He used to get naked with me and play Russian roulette to pump ourselves up before shooting.
Awesome. Thanks for that. That was educational. But yeah, that's going to wrap up the news. The last thing I want to touch upon is last week was kind of a big thing for video games in the mainstream. The first episode of The Last of Us premiered on HBO and HBO Max, and I tuned in on Sunday night. I actually fired up the old cable box and watched it live on HBO. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was solid. I wasn't necessarily sold on the casting of Ellie, but I think she did a very good job, and I look forward to seeing what they do with her through the rest of the season. I think Joel has done a great service by Pedro Pascal. I think he was very good casting. They made some changes from the game. Obviously, you're always going to make changes from a video game when you adapt it to a television show or a movie, just like when you write a book and your book gets turned into a television show or a movie. There's always going to be changes that are made. But I don't think any of the changes are detrimental to the story. They got rid of the whole spores thing, and there's a few different reasons for that. They didn't want their actors' faces covered by gas masks. I'm sure Pedro Pascal was having flashbacks to The Mandalorian. All that makes sense. And I think the tendril thing, the transmission of the disease, I think it works. I think it's perfectly fine. Now, like I said, I am filming this on Saturday, so I have not seen episode 2 yet. By the time this show comes out, episode 2 will have been out. So maybe, if I don't know if I'm going to talk about it every week, but if something is crazy, maybe we do follow along this season and talk about it every week. But I am really looking forward to it. I'm very optimistic, and something that I hope is that this opens the door for other video games to get adapted. Now, there's not a lot out there that I think can be adapted like this. They did the Uncharted movie. I personally enjoyed the Uncharted movie. It was very different from the games, and I knew that going in. I had those expectations going in. I did not expect this to be like the games. I knew it was going to be their own bastardization of the video game, and that's fine. I still enjoyed it for what it was. But I think that there are other games out there that you can adapt. I would honestly not be surprised if they start tapping into maybe some indie games for inspiration for stories, because with having perhaps having 2D graphics or not lifelike graphics, it's not as much of a visual jump to get there. You only know what the game looks like that way, and then you cast it with real people, and all that really matters is that the story is there. And that honestly could be a road to go down. I'm trying to think off the top of my head of something that's come out, recently, the past 5 years or so. similar to The Last of Us, but honestly, I don't know if that game has been released yet. I think that we're going to continue to push the boundaries of storytelling in video games. And, I think maybe after The Last of Us, the next big video game show or movie very well would be based on a video game that has not been released yet. Or if they really want to go all out, maybe they start looking at, the success of stuff like Game of Thrones and say, could we do a Dark Souls show? Could we do an Elden Ring show? Could we do something like that where it's maybe a little bit more open-ended? There's this loose lore around this world, and maybe it gives them a little bit more of a playground to mess around with. Who knows? But I'm optimistic for the future of video game TVs and movies. I really think the TV is probably the better place for video game stories to be told, simply because you get more time. It's very difficult to stuff a 40-hour game into a 2-hour movie. It just isn't going to work all the time. But on a TV show, you get multiple seasons. You've got time to play around with, and I'm excited. But yeah, that's going to wrap up the first episode of the new Reloaded edition of Perfect Reload. Christian, are you going to be joining us again next week? And I shudder at the thought that I already know the answer to this.
Yeah, I'll be here next week. My agent says that this is my punishment for Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
I think we're all being punished for that movie. See you next week.